Everyone, welcome to the Business Growth Pod. I'm your host, as always, Alan Draper. I'm excited for our guest today. This conversation is going to push me outside of my familiarity comfort zone, and so we're going to learn some things together. I'm excited. Before we get to our guest today, make sure to leave me a review on this podcast, whatever platform you listen to it on. Go ahead and drop me a review. Also, let me know how I'm doing. Go to my website, allandraper.com. And if you are in the process of starting a business or you're within a couple of years of starting and you need some help to kind of get to the next level, go ahead and click on that schedule link. 15 minutes. We could get a really good idea of what, if anything, I can do to help you. So our guest today is Randall Crowder. Okay, Randall is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of Phunware. We're going to get into that a little bit, which is a technology company in Austin. Randall's passionate about new venture creation and the innovative spirit that fuels entrepreneurs and advances technology. Sounds a lot like me. As an active investor and entrepreneur, he understands what it takes to successfully launch and grow new businesses. And he regularly publishes articles and speaks on entrepreneurship, venture capital, healthcare, and the rise of the blockchain. Welcome to the show, Randall.
Hey, appreciate you having me, Alan. It's a real pleasure. You come highly regarded, so this is exciting for me too.
Yeah, well, this is awesome, man. So you're currently the COO of Phunware. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you guys do over there?
Yeah, so we actually been around since 2009. We got our start building mobile apps. Sounds, really pedantic to say that now, but back in 2009, nobody knew what mobile was going to be. Less than 3% of internet content was actually consumed on mobile. And so we actually helped Apple design the App Store. We were one of the first companies allowed to publish to the App Store. And so we got our start building massive enterprise mobile applications. So we built the first NFL app. We built the first NASCAR app, all of Fox's mobile applications, WWE, Sochi Olympics, CW, you name it, across the passion vertical, sports media, entertainment. That's where we really dominated. And that's where the name comes from. It was a play on words. So it was applications that exhibit game-like mechanics and behavior. So a play on fun. And really it was, how do you better engage consumers? And so I think it might be out of your comfort zone, from a platform perspective, but it's not from a, what are you trying to do when you're growing a business or you're trying to reach a customer? You're trying to engage people. And as we've kind of grown over the last, 10, 15 years, people are inherently less loyal. They have limited attention spans. There's kind of, what have you done for me lately? And so how you engage customers really matters. And we live in a mobile first world that's quickly becoming mobile only. So how you leverage a mobile phone to connect with your customers in very material ways and meaningful ways is really critical for any brand. And so we did that for about 10 years, really got good at engaging people at scale, millions of transactions a second. And so we took all of that and we built a software platform around it. So now you can license a mobile platform the same way you would license a CRM from Salesforce, which is kind of revolutionary in the space, because normally you hire two Freds in a shed, they pound away on a keyboard, they build you a mobile app, they throw it over the fence, goodbye and good luck. And when Apple and Google change things, your app changes, crashes, it doesn't work anymore, and you're kind of screwed. So we grow with our businesses. And the cool thing about that is now we're actually targeting people who relate to the mobile game. So instead of sports media, entertainment, our big areas of focus are healthcare, hospitality, and even workplace. So how do we create the hospital of the future, a smart hospital that tech enables the continuum of care? How do we create a smart hotel experience? How do we create a smart workplace? So now you can use your mobile device, kind of like a mobile concierge, to do what we call contextual engagement. How do I get the right information to the right customer on the right screen at the right time in the right place? And really, I'm dating myself, but it's Minority Report. If you've ever seen, Tom Cruise in Minority Report, he's walking through the mall of the future and all the advertisements are personalizing to him and the hologram pops up and talks about his purchase history. That's digital transformation, or what we call contextual engagement. And you got to have some sort of digital anchor to that customer. That's the mobile device. That's what we do.
That's cool. So what companies need an app or something on mobile?
Yeah, in the past, it was always kind of that sports media entertainment vertical. They were the ones trying to engage their fans. We did a lot, whether it was, like I said, NFL or NASCAR or some sports teams. We did like AT&T Stadium. Whereas now it's kind of, we've seen the professionalization of mobile. And so where most people would think of like a mobile app for a hotel as, you know, a calendar. I'm going to do check-in, check out some rooms, look at some pictures, book my room, and then get a confirmation code. We don't think about a hotel app like that. We think about a hotel app as right when you arrive on property, that application spins up. So it's going to help guide you to where valet is. Your valet ticket's going to go straight to your phone. Right when you walk into the lobby, you're going to get your keys to your hotel or the elevator directly to your phone. You're going to use your phone to access any areas of the hotel that you might need to get access to, including your hotel room. You can use your phone to book amenities, see scheduled events, find your way actually around the property. So we have an immersive map that gives us basically real-time blue dot navigation inside a venue, the same way you would get navigation outdoors with GPS. You can even order food or drink from your phone and then, you know, go about your day. So if you're playing a blackjack in Vegas, you can, you know, no longer craning your neck around trying to find a waitress or a waiter. You can order the drink directly from your phone, then go to a different gaming station and they'll just find you. And so it's all about taking the mobile device and thinking of it less like just content consumption. You know, sure, you know, you can still stream Netflix. You can still fight with people on social media about mandates and vaccines, but we want to think about the mobile device as a very powerful computer that happens to be mobile, that it gives you a different way to engage your consumers with whatever's relevant to them. So I want to know who you are, where you are, what's most important to you to make your life better and ultimately drive profitability for your business. And so, you know, again, we play a lot with hospitals. You know, how do I find my way around these massive medical facilities? You know, how do I get my, you know, medical records directly on my phone, my discharge protocols on my phone? You know, how do I just kind of manage that entire continuum of care digitally? Hotels, hospitality companies. We just launched at Atlantis in the Bahamas, or we're in the process of launching in Atlantis in the Bahamas. They have an entire island called Paradise Island. And there's so much opportunity for people to discover new things. It's just hard to find it. And people get lost. They don't know what's around them. They don't know how to coordinate their stay. And so giving them a mobile device, a mobile platform that basically acts like an assistant in your pocket or increasingly in the palm of your hands. And so with our platform, you get access to all of that. And then we're really seeing a lot of smart workplace solutions come online where corporations are looking to trick out their office space. And so as people start to think about returning to work, you know, you want to book a conference room, order, you know, catering from ground floor retail, you know, send access credentials to, you know, people coming for a meeting. You want to do hybrid models where you're kind of renting, you know, or booking, you know, certain office space, but only on certain days instead of having, you know, dedicated office space. We manage all of that through one seamless mobile application. And that's kind of the future of how people are thinking about using mobile to better engage, whether it's their customers, their employees, or their visitors.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the majority of my listeners are early entrepreneurs. So people with, you know, within 6 months of pulling the trigger up until a couple of years, usually have some pretty big, you know, companies where that their business owners listen to this podcast. But what technology are those folks needing? What are some things that, and I have listeners everywhere from, you know, the pest control space to, you know, digital marketing agencies. What's the technology that startups is a must-have for startups? Like, do these companies really need an app? Do they really need this to get off the ground?
I don't think so, and it's probably maybe a segue less about Phunware and more just kind of about entrepreneurship and business and how to get going. Because I still have a fund, but it spent over a decade, and that was my full-time job, was only investing in startups or building startups. And so, you know, I think one, you know, probably the closest thing that we do that every startup does need to think about is just, you know, how do you market yourself? So we do data enriched media. So we have an entire division around kind of getting the right advertising to the right people. So we do a lot of work with government agencies or like Live Nation, like, so basically saying, okay, I have a marketing budget and I want to reach a certain customer, but I don't want to just spray and pray. I want to make sure I'm getting the right customer who's most likely interested in whatever I'm selling. And so that's called data enriched media. So no matter how young you are, that understanding, you know, what's your marketing strategy, you know, what's your customer acquisition costs, are you getting the best bang for your buck? You know, there's an old John Wanamaker quote, who's kind of the father of modern advertising, that says, you know, I know that I'm losing half of my money on marketing. The problem is I don't know which half. And that's really still a problem today. And now, you can start to get data to inform that. And so we do a lot of that work for startups. But, I think, probably, stepping away from kind of, the commercial for Phunware and just more about, just I'm starting a company. What do I do? The biggest advice I have is just get started. There is an old quote, not an old quote, but one of my favorite quotes is Jimmy Chin. He was actually a cinematographer and a mountaineer, but he was the guy who filmed Free Solo. And, his big quote is commit, then figure it out. And so I think the worst thing I see entrepreneurs do, regardless of technology, is just ideating. You got to get, you're going to get it wrong. So you need to get your product out there. And you need to start talking to customers, and you need to get it into the hands of customers. And so I actually wouldn't want them to necessarily say, well, hold on, let me go, I can't start, or I can't get going until I leverage all of this other technology. I'm always resistant of third-party dependencies when it comes to scaling. Like, I want to control my own fate. And so I don't want to rely on, well, I'll get this done only when I get this other thing done, or let me license this other software before I can really kind of hit the gas button on what I'm doing. There's always more you can do, that you can control. And I think the more an entrepreneur says, I want the ball, put me in, the more successful they'll be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what an entrepreneur has to be, is somebody that's like, hey, stuff's going to happen, stuff that I don't even know what it is yet. I'm going to be surprised, but regardless of what it is, we're going to figure it out. It's really tough for small businesses to live without Google, though. Right.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
But they got to get ahead of it. Cause what's interesting now is if they're not paying attention to what's happening with data, it's going to be in flux for a while, but it's changing in a big way. So you can't, and if anybody, I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably have, if you've been advertising on Facebook for the last, 5 years, it's getting harder and harder because what we are doing around regulations that are tied to privacy and consent are changing everything. So, Google's just getting rid of the third-party cookie. Brands are going to start to have to manage consent. And then also, the holy grail is going to be first-party data. So you can't just, exploit people's data through surveillance like we've been doing for the last, 20 years. There's going to be this move towards empowering consumers to control who markets to them, who reaches them. And so, we have a direct-to-consumer business that sells high-performance computers. And, you're going to have to constantly stay on top of that thing. If you were spending, a couple $100,000 on Facebook or Google to reach a certain amount of audiences, and you were getting a certain amount of conversion on that, I guarantee you it's going to get worse. And over the next, kind of 12 months, it's going to get worse and worse and worse until that third-party cookie goes away, and it's harder to reach your target customer. So you got to be thinking about those strategies now, and how can you leverage either people with first-party data like we have, or leverage people who are managing consent so you can ensure you're reaching the right people so you don't have that liability. And that'll be, to be determined as it kind of, it's really going to change the landscape of how people advertise.
It's interesting because that's the way it used to be, right? Yellow pages and billboards. Like we just showed the ad to everybody, and, and then,
see what happens.
Google came along and social media, and we could, advertise to females in a certain age demographic and a certain geo that like to buy shoes and shop on Wednesdays, right? Like it got so niche and so specific. And so what's a young company to do, man? Like this seems pretty complex. Are you saying things like email marketing is going to become more powerful and things like that?
I think where, it'll change. You'll go where, and we're doing this. So, Phunware as a whole, what I described before, the software is designed to deliver contextual engagement. And so we have a location software and we have an engagement software, and we kind of marry those two. So, I always say you can't really engage what you can't locate, full stop. But now taking that forward, it's like, well, if I can find you in order to engage you, I'm now going to need to verify and authenticate who you are. And that's actually in my benefit anyways. Like, I want to make sure I'm getting the right person, so I'm not wasting my time, I'm not wasting your time. And then there's another part of that that's like, well, if I know that what action you take after I engage you drives a certain level of profitability, I might even pay you to engage with me. So at Phunware, we're actually designing contextual engagement that can be authenticated and incentivized. And that authentication and incentivization kind of functionality, we're using blockchain to do that. And so blockchain is a really interesting technology that actually solves a lot of problems for this specific pain point. And so we have Phunwallet, that is our kind of native mobile application portfolio on iOS and Android. It manages two separate digital assets. One is Phuncoin, and then one is Phuntoken. And so that blockchain ecosystem really together is creating a decentralized data economy. So just like with Bitcoin, the idea is to cut banks out of the middle. You know, if you and me want to transact, why shouldn't we be able to just transact? Why do we have to go through a bank in order to do it? What reason would they have to sit in the middle of that transaction? That's the promise of Bitcoin, disintermediating banks. Well, the same thing is going to happen in data. Right now, Facebook and Google sit in the middle of it, and you're exactly right. You know, if they start changing the rules or moving the goalposts, what's a business to do? Well, the industry is trying to solve for that by removing them. Like, I don't want a bank telling me I can't
Google?
wire. Removing them out of the equation, not remove. You know, that company will continue, and Google's stepping away from it anyways. They're not going to replace the third-party cookie. They're like, we're done. And so, if you ever seen that that kind of mockumentary, but that series on HBO called Silicon Valley,
I haven't.
Oh man, you got to watch it, especially for entrepreneurs and venture capital. I mean, coming from a venture capitalist, it's a comedy, but it is spot on. And so from raising money to building a company, but the big idea that kind of underpins all of the seasons is this idea of creating a new internet. So that's literally, if you hear these terms like Web3, when you're talking about decentralization or crypto or blockchain, Web3 is a decentralized internet. So it's this concept of, can we create a trustless mechanism in which we can consume and serve up data? And so
I just have a feeling that the IRS is going to have a hell of a time just letting us do this.
What's interesting, and this is actually happening in real time right now, the government might be getting this somewhat right because they're paying attention to people in the technology sector. So coming from healthcare, this happened with the FDA. So the FDA was so strict, it pushed a lot of innovation outside of the US. The government is being warned that this is what will happen if they try to overregulate crypto. Like, if you make it so draconian that, it's not going to stop it. The cat's out of the bag. Crypto is here to stay. But the question is, do you want it to be a competitive advantage of the US or a competitive advantage of everyone else, like China? And so the government, that's why you haven't seen, everybody talks about it, but right now crypto regulation is kind of like gun control. Everybody talks about it, but nobody really does that much about it. It's great political fodder, but people understand that that's not a hill they want to die on. So crypto will 100%, there will be if the government can make money on it, it will be taxed, but it should be. There's this idea that you can just, make millions of dollars, on a Tor network and just nobody's going to be the wiser, and you can, wear a tinfoil hat and be anonymous to the world. That's not the promise of crypto.
I'm in favor of that.
Hey, you know what? If I could get away with it, I'd be all for it. But, practically speaking, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
Look,
right.
Al Capone got away with murdering people. He did not get away with screwing over the IRS.
Hey, do you know what's funny? But exactly, that's how they caught him, right? They caught him because 100%. Of his taxes.
You can kill everybody, across America, but you cannot screw the government on their money.
So that's one of my biggest worries. I'm also worried about China inventing their own crypto, that anybody that does business with China, they have to use their crypto, which is going to, really screw with foreign relations, and they're going to control all the data, right? They're going to
already done it with data.
Way too much about us. And, that's...
You know what they've done with personalized medicine? Nobody's paying attention to it. So here's the thing. It is... Right now, it's less about war, and it's less. China has no. I was in Shanghai not that long ago, and China has no desire to go to war with us. Like, it is not like a wartime mongering thing, and the U.S. gets this wrong a lot because we always have to have an enemy. We had the Soviet Union, then we had terrorism. We always want to have an enemy. China wants no part of that. I mean, hell, you know, we're indebted to them in a big way. They want us to pay that back. And so, and they have their own problems, but they are certainly opportunistic. And, you know, one of the things they've been doing is they have one of the areas that we've lost in is personalized medicine by a big way. China has been investing in buying, stealing, acquiring as much, you know, genetic information as possible, not to kill the world. You know, that doesn't do them any good, but they are getting really good at figuring out what targeted therapies are good for you and creating a massive, you know, economic, you know, boom from that. And we better wake up to that, because we're going to miss out on that in a big way. So you're literally, I mean, 23andMe, all of those, they're conduits to sending genetic information to China. And then they're just using it, not nefariously, they're using it to understand, you know, what products to sell you and how to figure out how to stay ahead of personalized medicine. And that'll be a new, you know, net new innovation that I think the U.S. is, because of the FDA and the way we do things, you know, we're going to be way behind the power curve.
It's interesting though, that we're talking about, like, on one hand, like digital marketing, how, you know, the world is changing because, you know, everybody's worried about privacy and all these things. But then on the other hand, with our health, it's going the other direction. Doesn't that seem like it's the case?
You know, what's funny is it's because, you know, and this goes back to your you know, entrepreneurship and everybody in business. You got to understand kind of what are the motivating factors, what are the unintended consequences. You know, in healthcare, we don't own the dollar, you know, because we have all these perverse incentives because we're not responsible for it. And then businesses have perverse incentives because the patient's not responsible for the dollar either. So that's why you go in and all of a sudden, you know, a procedure that probably should cost, you know, $5,000, it costs $30,000, or an MRI that costs probably $300 ends up you getting billed, you know, $1,000 or $1,500 for it. And even that changes across facilities because it's all basically a shell game. You know, the patient's not paying for it, government's subsidizing it, insurance companies doing this over here. And so healthcare has always been counterintuitive. And it's also something that nobody wants to think about unless they're sick. And I mean, we dealt with this, you know, as I funded different healthcare startups. It's hard to get people to think about their health. That's why we don't see any movement towards preventative medicine. People don't want to think about it, and then they want to take a pill to fix it, or they want to have a surgery to fix it, and then they don't want to pay for it, you know, when it happens. And so,
yeah, you know what's interesting
healthcare will
is
always
that,
be something we're slow.
Yeah, that I'm cash pay, and I recently ruptured my Achilles. Okay, about 5 months ago.
Man,
and
I'm
so
sorry.
I got to see. Yeah, it kind of sucked. I learned some good
still
lessons.
Getting bills? Are you still getting bills?
Well, I'm cash pay, and so I got to see.
Okay.
I got to see the other side of it. Right, this was the first kind of you know, big medical expense or group of expenses that I've had since I've been cash pay the last few years, and it's just interesting how everything was handled differently. Like, everything's a lot less expensive. There was one bill that I didn't receive it at first, and then the next time they sent me a bill, it was like half of what they originally billed.
Yep.
And so
did you negotiate any of the pricing?
Like,
so that's what this is, and nobody knows this. Like, you can literally call, you know, revenue cycle and just say, you know, hey, you know, I got this bill. It's, you know, it's $2,500. I'll give you $1,000 right now, and otherwise I'm not going to pay it. They'll take it. They'll be like, okay. It's
That's
crazy. People don't know that. So like, I ruptured my pec 3 months ago, and yeah, it is, the healthcare system is a total shell game, which I understand why it is. I don't say it in a way like I don't want to live anywhere else. I mean, I like, you know, American, you know, healthcare, even though some people, you know, kind of like to criticize it, but at the end of the day, it is a big economic engine. I mean, it's a massive portion of our GDP. It's just funny money at this point. And so you're 100% right. It's sad how many people don't understand, you know, the difference in pricing if you're cash pay, but also even the difference in pricing if you just negotiate with them.
So what's going to happen with health insurance? I know a lot of small businesses, they face this question like, hey, should I provide health insurance? And I do for a bulk of my companies. What's funny is that I'm not on it. Right. I find that, but I'm in a position where I can pay for healthcare up front. Right. And save money by not paying the premiums. So where is it headed? Are we going to kind of continue down this path where it's just, we're trying to get coverage for everybody, this universal type deal, or where's it headed?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of misinformation out there about healthcare. People thought that so like everything, some of government's initiatives or some political initiatives are well-intentioned and poorly executed. It might sound good, but it doesn't actually work in reality. And so, but then, we live in a world of kind of social media that people think because they watch a couple stories on Instagram, that they understand what's going on, and they don't. And unfortunately, they're just passing along, misinformation after misinformation after misinformation. So this concept that, oh, well, Obamacare was all about making me pay for somebody else's healthcare. You're already paying for their healthcare. Like, slow down, hot rod. Like, you are, insurance companies are accounting for the uninsured in your premiums. And so the concept for getting everybody insured was to just make that more transparent. Then it became a total mess, because anytime the government tries to do anything, it's a total mess. And so, what the problem with our healthcare system right now is the uninsured will avoid healthcare, very cheap, lower cost preventative measures because they don't have insurance, and they'll wait until an acute episode, and they'll use an ER as, basically their primary care. And then it costs orders of magnitude more than what it would have cost. So think about like pregnancy. Like, I actually knew a woman in Chicago, didn't have insurance, a couple pills that cost maybe like $10, would have actually saved her and her baby. But she ended up having, a medical emergency, taken to the hospital, baby died, she died. It cost the city over $1 million, and it could have been prevented with a couple pills. So understanding, what is the actual impact of healthcare avoidance because you're not on a plan is going to be critical. But I think that it's going to have to be businesses. So what businesses are doing now, and I actually had a company that I invested in that would do this, would be to take, actually do case rates. And so they were focused mostly on, insured by employer insured healthcare. But it would be, all right, I'm going to negotiate with the hospital for case rates. So there's, I already know what it's going to be. If you have a ruptured Achilles, you're going to go in, this is the price you pay. And it's not going to change. And so that's called case rates. And so you'll take centers of excellence that do these cases all the time. They'll be like, look, we're going to just do it for one set flat fee. That is one measure to kind of control it. But it's going to take a lot of different, people taking a lot more accountability to what's happening before we ever change healthcare. And you're right. I don't see it materially changing anytime soon.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Well, we're running short on time here, Randall. I can tell, like, a lot about pretty much everything. We could go on for another couple hours
I don't
here
know about that.
But here's what I want to wrap up with. We live in an interesting time, man, with COVID.
Yeah.
Like, just, I've had it 3 times now.
Oh man,
I don't
get out of
think
here.
it's
3 times.
3 times. The first time I was asymptomatic. The second time I got hit, laid me out for a month. I tried to record a couple podcast episodes, and one of them was the worst one I've ever recorded. And then I just got over it again a couple of weeks ago, which it wasn't as bad the third time. But there's so much with data, with healthcare, with COVID. What is a small business owner, somebody that's just getting started, somebody that's starting this, scale their company? How do they stay in front of, you made this comment, they need to stay in front of, stay in front of the technology so they can market their companies. How do they stay in front of all of these issues that can affect their businesses? And what's the source of the information? Because there's so much shit out there that we don't know what to believe. And so sometimes we don't listen to any of it.
Man, so we could do probably a whole episode on just that question. I think, so first and foremost, what you said, your question was almost the answer. It is, you're never going to operate as an entrepreneur in a kind of a symmetric way. It's all asymmetry. So it's all just the minute you think you have it figured out, something's going to change. The minute, coming, so from Phunware's perspective, we have been through every possible black swan event you could possibly imagine, and so I think that's just, that means, you're an entrepreneur. Don't be dejected when you're, 2 weeks from bankruptcy. Don't be dejected when that one customer who you counting on, ends up balking. Don't be dejected when your star employee quits. Don't be dejected when someone doesn't want to work for you. Don't be dejected when you find out someone's stealing from you. Like, these are all just part of being in the game. And so, I think understanding that you're not alone, that this is table stakes, and you're growing and you're learning from it, I think is first and foremost. Don't get, demoralized by all the pain and the chaos that comes with running your own business. Then, kind of staying on top of things, you got to talk to your customers. You'd be surprised at how many small business owners, if they're technology minded, they'll be all about the code, all about the tech. Some people are all about selling, but then they don't have any concept of customer success, or retention. It's a lot easier to sell more to an existing customer than to go acquire a new customer. And so I think a lot of times, just having that feedback loop inside of your business, your customers will actually tee you up to like certain changes in the market, like how they either buy or what they need from you, or wait a minute, this doesn't work, or hey, do I need a mobile app to help manage my customers, or do I need some solution to help manage loyalty, or are there certain additional services I can provide that make me stand out compared to my competition? You'll know that by talking to your customers. And I tell you, so many people just don't. They'll even if they sell it, they'll goodbye and good luck. It's awesome for a customer to get a call from the CEO and be like, hey, just want to know, what'd you think? You happy? Like, how's it going? Like, don't send an email. Actually talk to somebody. Be a human being and understand that people at their core essence want to be validated. And you validate people through your attention and your time. And so as a business owner, doing that will pay dividends, and it'll actually keep you ahead of either competition or market changes, just by understanding what are the pain points your customers are facing. Yeah,
man, there was so much in that response. I'm going to unpack a couple of things and then we're going to wrap up. One, you talked about change. Look, at entrepreneurs, we get into business because we don't want a 9-to-5, man. We don't want to do the same thing every day. So then we need to stop complaining when things actually change. One set of my companies, one of our core values is that we evolve, right? We get in the front of it. And I honestly believe for everything that happens, there is something good that could come out of it. And it may not be PC to say, but there are some things going on right now, and there are companies that are taking advantage of it. So number one, embrace the change and expect it, right? And then number two, you said listen to your customers. I think that is awesome, man. Who cares what the research is saying? What are your customers saying? And the only other thing that I would add is listen to your employees. Listen to your people too.
That might have been the first. We should probably shift that to the beginning. Simon Sinek talks a lot about this, and I talk about this with my employees. I never say my customer's always right. In my mind, my employees are almost always right. That doesn't mean that you have to pick one over the other, but you always be very careful about throwing your employees under the bus for a customer, because customers are needy, and they are what
they're
have you done for me lately? And 100%.
Yeah, and you don't that, and an employee will never forget it. And on the flip side,
100%.
If you side with your employee and say, "Hey, if I lose that customer, I lose a customer," the employee's worth a lot more, especially in today's labor market. The employee will never forget that. They'll never forget that you chose them over a customer. And I always say, Randall, that if I take care of my employees are going to take care of my customers. And then my customers are going to take care of me.
Couldn't say it better. That we should end on that, because that's powerful. And if anybody takes anything away, that should be it.
Love it. Well, hey, Randall, where do people reach out to you if they want to find out more about what Phunware is doing, all the great things that you guys are building and accomplishing over there?
Absolutely. So easy to find Phunware. So it's actually Phunware. So Phunware.com. The mobile app is Phunwallet, so it's phunwallet.com. The digital assets are funcoin.com and funtoken.com. And then I'm easy to find. So I'm Randall Crowder at just about anything, RandallCrowder. So LinkedIn, it's Randall Crowder. Instagram, it's Randall Crowder. Twitter is Randall Crowder, but I can't figure out what my password is. So at the moment, it's just Crowder Official. And eventually one day I'll figure out how to unlock Randall Crowder again, but I don't have time to deal with it right now. So one of these days. But yeah, if I can be helpful to anybody, let me know. And really appreciate you having me on, and excited for what you're doing for especially, just young entrepreneurs and small business owners. They're the future. I mean, that's what's really going to start picking our economy back up is people, that really, and this is a great opportunity. I mean, with disruption comes opportunity. So I hope people took the last 2 years and probably what's going to be another year of working from home to think about what they want to do with their lives. What do they want to build? Where do they want to grow? And so I appreciate everything you're doing for them.
All right. Thanks, Randall. Pleasure's all mine.
Hey, thanks, Allan. Everybody take care. Happy New Year.
If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave us a rating. And for daily inspiration and business tips, follow Allan on Instagram. Until next time, remember, we build the future one entrepreneur at a time.